DSW, Designer Shoe Warehouse, is the one-stop shop for all your footwear needs. With sneakers, boots, and everything in between, for every style, mood, and occasion, you'll definitely find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. DSW has what you need, but more importantly, they have what you didn't even know you wanted. You never know what you'll find at DSW. Find the shoes that get you at prices that get your budget at DSW stores or dsw.com.
Welcome to Season 8 of Flusterclux with Lynn Lyons, where we talk about managing worry, anxiety, and all the other emotions too.
I'm Lynn Lyons. I'm an anxiety expert, author, speaker, and mom. I've been a therapist for 35 years, and I'm still in the trenches with families, helping them navigate daily struggles and big problems. Parenting can be a flusterclux, but we tackle the serious stuff without being too serious.
I'm Robin. I'm Lynn's sister-in-law and co-host, and I'm here to ask your questions.
And I'm Ed, the producer of Flusterclux.
And my brother.
And my husband.
Anxiety is a family problem with a family solution. Hey, Ed.
Hi, Lynn. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I don't know when this will air, but we just had our first snowstorm of the winter. So I'm sitting here in beautiful 7 inches of snow, so it looks very nice.
Well, our son was angling for a snow day, and we got about 1/4 of an inch.
Yeah.
Not happening.
Yeah. They started canceling schools the night before, of course, because the predictions were pretty big. Yeah, so deep in it.
Well, speaking of the winter,
Yeah.
the Winter Olympics coming up, and Michaela Schifrin had some advice to the struggling populace.
All right. Well, okay. So 2 things happened on virtually the same day. One was that somebody sent me a question on the Facebook group, the Flusterclux Facebook group, saying, hey, a lot of my clients, she's a therapist, a lot of my clients have been talking about this sour candy thing, that you're supposed to eat sour candy and it helps your anxiety. And so I, of course, had the obligatory eye roll, like, oh, here we go again. I thought, all right, well, I'm going to bring that up on the podcast. And then I was watching Michaela Schifrin did a slalom race in Colorado at Copper Mountain this past weekend, which she won, of course, because she's an incredible slalom skier. Yeah. And they said like, hey, I hear you're eating sour candy to help with your nerves in the starting gate. And I was like, oh, for the love of Pete. Yeah. So the question the person asked is like, is there any research on this or what's going on? Is this a crutch? Is this something that helps? So it is along the lines of doing something to distract yourself. So I actually looked it up because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't being just grumpy and that maybe there was a random control trial where some people had a lovely little jelly bean and other people had a Sour Patch Kid. I don't know, but everything that I found said this is something that distracts your nervous system. Now, sometimes people get way into it. They're like, the parasympathetic nervous system reacts to the taste of the sour candy. And I'm like, oh, for the love of Pete again, for the love of Pete. So it's holding ice cubes in your hand, biting into a sour lemon, splashing cold water on your face. It's just a way that if you're freaking out about something, if you're feeling anxious, you do this thing and it distracts you. And let's also not forget that the placebo effect is really, really powerful. And so if you tell an anxious person, hey, if you chew on this sour candy, it's going to make you less anxious. We can tell people most anything, but it really is just a distraction. Is it a horrible thing? No. Do I think it's just another one of those ways that people are using to try and make something sound legitimate that's just really like suck on a sour candy? Yes.
The candy lobby.
Yeah. yeah. They've got their hands in everything, don't they?
Well, it's a big market. Anxiety, as your calendar can attest.
That's right. So good on them, right? For figuring out how can we insert sour candies into this. So yeah, if your kid is freaking out and you give him a sour candy, go ahead. My whole thing is that I really am averse to any kind of what I refer to as elimination strategies, that if you do this thing, it will get rid of, because one day is sour candy, the next day is shot of tequila. I mean, that's a little dramatic, but the message is the same, is that you have to take this substance in order to get rid of these feelings.
Something independent of yourself.
Correct.
That is the magic tool/pill.
Correct. Yeah. And so what I would prefer, of course, is that people change their relationship to their worried thoughts when they show up. What if you said to a kid, okay, I know you're really anxious about that. I know you're really nervous about that. We aren't really going to pay attention to what your worry is telling you. You're still going to audition for the play. You're still going to take your test. You're still going to order in the restaurant. And then here, if you take this little sour candy, it might help. Okay, right. I'm not going to die on that hill. But the way that these things are often promoted are like, this is this thing that you can use and it will help you with your anxiety. And it's really just another in a long list of try this fidget spinner, try this stress ball, try this whatever. So go ahead, suck on your sour candy.
But it's not going to provide anything that's sustaining in terms of its ability to help a young person.
Correct. Yeah. And again, the power of suggestion and the suggestibility when it comes to a lot of things is something that you can harness. A good example would be if your child was anxious about something and you said, I hope that you're going to be safe. Oh, pay attention because this could be really tricky and I want you to, that's one thing. Or you can say, you know what, you got this. And so the message that we give to kids, however we do that, whether it be verbally or we hand them a Sour Patch Kid, to me, it's sort of like all of the remedies for getting rid of the hiccups. It's sort of that category. Drink from the glass this way, or count to 17 and divide it by 4 and then bite into a radish. You know, there are all these rituals that people do.
I haven't heard that one.
Well, I'll tell you. I am skeptical about a lot of things, but that one works. I just made that up. Yeah.
All right. Who has a fresh radish on hand?
I know. It's probably why it didn't gain popularity. Like somebody tried to get that going.
Yes.
And people were like, you know what?
The radish lobby.
That's right.
We're clearly not as well positioned on K Street as the Sour Patch Kid lobby.
That's true. Yeah, because Michaela Schifrin wasn't talking about radishes, that's for sure.
No.
Yeah, they aren't promoting vegetables.
So what are we diving into today?
Well, I just want to revisit something, as we say, because there's this phrase that I often use, doing the disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which you want to change it a little bit.
I know that it has alliterative excitement.
Yes, it does.
Doing the disorder. The cover of People magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Marie Osmond talks about friendship, faith, and family.
Right.
They love a good alliterative headline in People magazine.
I do too.
Yes, you do, which is probably driving doing the disorder.
Yeah.
But I would suggest also aiding the disorder.
Mm-hmm.
What are those things that we're doing that are helping the disorder just grow and feed upon itself and get stronger?
Right. Are you working for the disorder? Based on what the disorder wants, are you doing things? And here's the rub, is that you're often doing things that make sense in the moment and then are actually putting your focus right where I don't want it to be. So I have some examples of that. And I've talked about this. I mean, I think anybody that's listened to me or come to my trainings or probably been in my office has heard me talk about this. But I think it's worth talking about again. Just so you know, the way I come up with things to talk about is that something annoys me, like Michaela Schifrin talking about sour candy. Or I'm with a family and I'm explaining this and I'm trying to convey this because this is something I really want them to know as they're doing their work for therapy, as they're trying to change these patterns. And so I did have a few families over the past few weeks in several different ways needing this little reminder and pep talk. So I thought, well, maybe everybody needs this reminder and pep talk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break and then we'll come back and dive right into it.
All right. All right. It's the time of year. We've got sensory overload everywhere, but one feeling we're still chasing, it's cozy. And Bombas has the socks, the slippers, the tees, basically everything you need to be as cozy as possible. Bombas makes socks that I wear every day. In fact, I'm looking down at my feet. I'm wearing them right now. Every time I go to the gym, I've got on my Bombas socks. I use them for hiking, for walking, for lifting weights. And you know what else? I bought this Bombas bra. Who knew? It's fabulous. It is comfortable. The fit is amazing. Bombas makes gift giving easy. So, what do you get your son's girlfriend? What do you get your friend that you work out with every day? What do you get your father-in-law who's really picky about whether or not his socks feel itchy? Bombas is the place to go. And we haven't even gotten to the best part. For every pair of Bombas you purchase, Bombas donates one to someone facing homelessness on your behalf. So anytime you get something cozy, someone else does too. Head over to bombas.com/audio and use code AUDIO for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/audio, code AUDIO at checkout. So when I'm hydrated, everything just works better. It is better for my workouts, my energy, my mood. It keeps my skin looking the way I want my skin to look. It's winter here, so it's not hot, but it is dry. And making sure that I am hydrating on a regular basis is so important. And I don't love to drink water. That's where Drip Drop comes in. Drip Drop is proven fast hydration. It's got 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading sports drinks. And they even have a 0 sugar option. I love the citrus pack because it has cherry limeade and strawberry lemonade and orange flavors that just make getting my hydration up to where it needs to be makes it easy. It is the choice of over 90% of top college and pro teams. And right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. So go to dripdrop.com and use promo code Flusterclux. That's dripdrop.com, promo code Flusterclux for 20% off. Stock up now, stay hydrated at dripdrop.com and use promo code Flusterclux.
Hey everybody, it's Ophira Eisenberg from the Parenting is a Joke podcast. Let me ask you a question. Are you multitasking right now? Oh yeah, commuting, working out, school drop-off or pickup, crossing things off on your never-ending to-do list. But what about checking in on you? Therapy can help make that part easier. Whether it's your first time in therapy or your 50th, Grow Therapy makes it simple. They connect you with thousands of independent licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions, nights and weekends. You can get started in as little as 2 days, and if something comes up, you can cancel up to 24 hours in advance at no cost. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments, just therapy on your time. So whatever challenges you're facing, Grow Therapy is here to help. Sessions average about $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0, depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/parents today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/parents. One more time, growtherapy.com/parents. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
Okay, we're back.
All right, Lynn, we're back. And give us the first example of doing the disorder or aiding the disorder.
I know, and I just thought of another one, working for the worry. And that's alliterative also.
That's very good.
Yeah.
You have to get new t-shirts now, though.
Got to update my merch.
You know, the Patriots do that all the time to sell new merch. There you go. They have a new jersey every week, it seems, so.
I know. Well, and also, let us not digress because, oh my gosh, isn't it great to be back on top? Yeah, I know that people hate us and hate the Patriots, but it was a grim few years and now we're on top again, everybody. So
it's exciting.
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so take your sour candy and suck it. Okay, so the first example, which everybody who listens should know about, but I'm going to just reiterate it, working for the worry, doing the disorder, is when you're providing certainty and planning. And the goal of the anxiety, remember, is to make sure that everything goes as planned. And so what I see very often is that families really want to make sure that everything goes as planned. So there's a lot of talk about the plan and a lot of trying to keep everything on track. Schools do this too. And what I have been seeing recently, which just is another way that we're working for the worry, that we're doing the disorder, is that families are really almost desperately clinging to this idea of a routine. Now, it can get a little confusing because, of course, we want a routine. Like in the morning, if you're trying to get your kids off to school, it's good to have a routine. You don't want to be freelancing every morning and have things move sequentially. These are the things we have to do to get out of the house. And if you think about all the things where a routine helps you, it is good to have a routine. You guys travel. I'm sure you have routines with that. I get up in the morning to go to the gym. I have a routine that I do that allows me to get out of the house on time. I have a routine that I do at the gym. The problem is that when anxiety is calling the shots, it is saying, you better do the routine or else. And the ability to manage when things don't go as planned is the opposite of what anxiety demands. So that's the first thing we want to pay attention. The other thing that I think doesn't get talked about enough is anxiety loves, oh, here's another alliteration. I'm on it today. Anxiety loves analysis. Anxiety loves to go over things, to figure things out. Remember that we have kids that are seeking reassurance, they're checking in, they're making sure. And the more that you analyze, the more that you try and figure it out, the more that you try and unlock this mystery, which it's not a mystery, everybody, the more that you're doing the disorder. Because anxiety loves nothing better than to keep talking, analyzing, figuring out, assessing, and not take action.
And you've spoken about how frequently there might be one child who's struggling with anxiety in a family and one less so. And the one who's struggling less so can become very frustrated or resentful of the daily hoops and machinations that have been constructed within the family to aid the anxiety to do the disorder.
That's right. What happens in families like that, and it could happen with different parents too. I recently had that happen where one parent is anxious and one parent is not. This is why I call it a cult leader, is that the anxiety has demands, and I totally get it. You're just trying to figure out how to keep things moving along. But the problem is, and this is sort of the irony of it, the things that you're doing to keep it moving along are actually stopping movement. So the frustration that you talk about is like there's kids and they want to get to the movie on time, or they're going to go out to dinner, and the anxious person, it could be the parent too, but the anxious family member needs to think about it, talk about it, work it through. There have to be all sorts of discussions about it. And then oftentimes the family, in order to give the anxious person what they're demanding, the family will then sort of concede and be like, all right, we'll go to that restaurant, or we won't go to that place. And so everybody's sort of working to try and make sure that the anxiety gets what it wants. And the anxiety is not interested in novelty. It's not interested in fun. It's not interested in adventure. It's not interested in risk. It's interested in making sure everything goes as planned. So the whole idea that we say, if you have an anxious child, make sure they know everything in advance, is doing the disorder. The whole idea of saying this child has difficulty with change and transitions at school because of their anxiety, make sure that they are always warned ahead of time. This child doesn't like surprises, or this child can't handle fill in the blank. So let's make sure that we don't do anything uncertain or uncomfortable. All of that is doing the disorder, working for the worry, making the anxiety stronger, conceding to its demands.
And as you've said many times, continually making the child's world that much smaller.
Correct.
By preventing new experiences, potentially new friendships, new clubs, new activities.
Anything. Yeah, I can see it happening. I was just doing a consult with an 11-year-old last week. And this family, like many families, had sort of known that their child was a worrier, had known that there was some anxiety, and was working very hard to sort of figure it out, was working very hard to manage it, but unfortunately was doing all the things that I don't recommend. So that's why it's good if you go to see somebody who understands this, that's great. The other problem is, however, is that if you go to somebody who doesn't understand this, they will prescribe the very thing that makes it worse, which, you think, well, how could somebody who's in the mental health field, or how could somebody who's a school counselor, or how could somebody who is a pediatrician prescribe the thing that makes it worse? They do. And it happens all the time because they're looking for the short-term relief. They're looking for the Sour Patch Kid rather than how do we change the pattern.
What was your advice to this specific family relative to their problem? The content not being the matter, but what were the steps that you prescribed for them?
What I very often do is I explain how it works because I want people to understand that this is a disorder of patterns, not a disorder of content. This is a disorder of how worry works. And then even just talking to them in the first few minutes of the session, I was able to say, it looks like you guys have been pulled into this accommodation trap. And so what I want you to do, and in the session we could talk about it, what are all the ways that you feel like the worry is in charge of your family and of out it comes? And we have to do this. We have to do that. She freaks out. We don't know what to do when she freaks out. So we don't do this. We don't do that. Sometimes I say, I want you to keep track of all the accommodations that you're putting in place. But this family, out they came. So I said, this is what I want you to focus on is pulling back on the accommodations. I want you to be supportive. I want you to be empathic. I want you to be warm and loving and all that stuff. But I want you to see what happens when you don't follow the worry's demands. And then I predict what will happen, which is your kid will get angry, freak out, say they hate my guts, all that stuff. The challenge with this family, which is very often the case, is that the non-anxious parent was totally on board. The non-anxious parent was like, oh my God, thank you. The non-anxious parent could see how this had evolved over time. The anxious parent was really, really worried that it was going to upset their child, which it absolutely was. But this is the thing we have to recognize is that you can't stay ahead of this thing. And so if your goal is to never upset your child, which won't happen, even if you're doing all the things that the worry demands, your child is still going to get upset. If you can't handle your child experiencing any upset or distress or big feelings, you're going to remain captive by this thing. So parents need a lot of coaching, and that's when I sort of play it out. This is what's going to happen. And sometimes what's helpful is if the child is in the room, which very often is the case, we'll come up with a few things to try. So what are the accommodations that we can get rid of just to sort of give them some practice? So I'm not going to go whole hog. It may be that I can say, okay, it sounds like you're doing these 27 things. Let's start with these 2 things and see what happens and see how this thing operates. So it really is, I want them to change their behavior and then observe how things get worse at first, but then how that takes us in the right direction. Always, my job is redundant. I do the same thing.
It can be a point where it becomes complex within the marriage. So then the child's anxiety has the unintended and unfortunate consequence of putting strain on the married couple's connection.
Absolutely. Say the parent isn't anxious themselves, but they really have a harder time letting their child struggle. Then it becomes a battle between who's going to win. And that does not serve a child well at all. It's confusing to a child, and kids figure out very quickly who to go to and who not to go. The anxiety figures out who its allies are for sure. And so then you've got going behind their back or they're doing things. So the family, the way it might play out is that one parent says, okay, so we're going to get on the school bus, or we're going to drop her off at gymnastics and leave. And then the other parent will be like, yes, 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 I totally agree with it. That's what we should do. But then when the time comes, that other parent tries to work around it. And boy, you can imagine that if one parent is like, we need to be consistent, and the other parent is being a little, I don't want to say devious, but often that's how it plays out, then there are a lot of conflicts. And the kids are right in the middle. And then again, remember, we might have a non-anxious sibling that's watching all of this play out, who is becoming more and more frustrated with their parents' inability to be consistent and their siblings' inability to do what they want them to do. So the poor little anxious kid becomes kind of the focus of all of this conflict and distress and tension in the family. And that's not their intent, of course. I mean, I know I say this all the time, and it just happened again. Do not take your child to see somebody who works with anxiety who doesn't work with you, because these are all the dynamics at play. But it happens all the time, all the time. Yep, just heard of another person emailed me.
The complexity is you're then almost inherently asking the young child to bring all the information home and inform their parents.
Yeah, right, right. I mean, that dynamic that I just described, you're going to have the 8-year-old handle that,
Right.
right? Not fair. You're going to, even if you're going to have the 15-year-old handle that, not fair. So it's so important. Yeah, this thing runs in families. If we look at it through a social lens, through a family lens, through a systems lens, then we can make some progress. We should not be treating any of these things in isolation, both anxiety or depression, not in isolation.
And there's a solid chance that something could be lost in translation from the therapist's advice to the 8-year-old and then the 8-year-old relaying it back to the parents.
Well, of course, because as soon as they leave my office, then the worry and the 8-year-old are back in cahoots. Oh my gosh, I get misquoted. Like sometimes people say, well, I know that you say, or
Right.
I know, and I'm like, I did not say that. Yeah. Somebody said that recently. I know you always say. I was like, no, I don't always say. Yeah, I get misquoted a lot.
All right, we'll take a break and then we'll come right back.
'Tis the season. We're spending money. You're going shopping. You're buying gifts. Have you ever had the experience where you open your credit card bill or you look at your bank statement and you think, where the heck did the money go? If you want to keep your finances under control this holiday season, you need to be using Monarch. Rated Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025, Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean interface on your laptop or your phone. And right now, just for our listeners, Monarch is offering 50% off your first year. What happens when you start to track your spending? What happens when you start paying attention to the places that your money goes? It gives you the ability to check in to make sure that you are meeting your financial goals. You may have a goal of saving $100 a week or reducing your spending $1,000 a month. It doesn't matter, but what happens is that you begin to pay attention, you become an expert in your own budgeting. It helps with your relationships. It helps with the things you want to spend your money on, those big trips you might be planning, or those major purchases you want to make. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code FLUSTER at monarch.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code FLUSTER. I love learning new things. I love hearing stories about how people succeed at what they do. Even if their area of expertise is not at all related to mine, you pick up the patterns, the processes, what they do that actually makes them better at their chosen field. With Masterclass, learn from the best to become your best. Listening to James Clear talk about Atomic Habits, a book that so many of my clients have read in order to be more productive. There is a parenting class with one of my favorites, Lisa D'Amour, and other wonderful experts. Alice Waters, Gordon Ramsay, anything that you can imagine is on Masterclass. I can watch it on my phone. I can take these classes with me, and they're just stimulating and so interesting. They've got plans starting at $10 a month, billed annually. You get unlimited access to over 200 classes taught by the world's best business leaders, writers, chefs, and more. You can gift Masterclass. Here we are, the time of holiday giving. What a great gift to give someone so that they can enjoy all of this amazing information. Masterclass always has great offers during the holidays, sometimes up to as much as 50% off. Head over to masterclass.com/fluster for the current offer. That's up to 50% off masterclass.com/fluster. Masterclass.com/fluster. Here's the thing about being a great gift giver. When you find something truly perfect for everyone on your list, you almost don't want to give it away. That's what happened with my Quince order. I ordered some long sleeve merino wool tops. I love to be outdoors. Their activewear is amazingly versatile and comfortable and fits great. I didn't want to give it away. Well, I did give it away, but then I ordered one for myself too. Everything is so soft and well made. Quince pretty much has your whole list covered. They've got cashmere sweaters for $50. They have the kind of denim that goes with everything, silk tops and skirts for when you need to look put together. The Italian wool coats are absolutely amazing. They look designer, feel luxurious. They're made with premium materials. By working directly with trusted factories that maintain high standards for both craftsmanship and ethical practice, and by cutting out the middlemen and the markups, Quince is able to pass those savings straight to you. Find gifts so good you'll want to keep them with Quince. Go to quince.com/fluster for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/fluster to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/fluster. Okay, so now back to the show.
All right, Lynn, we're back. Tell us about the next element of this that you'd like to discuss.
This is something that, in terms of the wrong thing being prescribed, this happens a lot too. And this has to do with physical symptoms, what we call somatic symptoms. So it is very common for kids to have tummy aches, functional abdominal pain. It is very common for kids to feel physical things that dictate what they do and what they don't do. And once it's been determined that these are anxiety driven, which doesn't mean they're not having the symptoms. It means that they've been evaluated and they don't have any physical maladies. Everything's working as it should. The problem is that if you have somebody who is expressing their anxiety through physical symptoms, again, super common, we don't want to focus on the body. As I learned very early in my career, what you focus on, you amplify. What happens often is that if you have a child, let's just take tummy aches, for example, stomach aches, stomach pain, very common. If you treat the stomach pain as if it is in charge of what your child does or doesn't do, then you're doing the disorder, you're working for the worry. And what very often happens is parents and a lot of practitioners too will prescribe over-the-counter medications or use over-the-counter medications as a way to manage these physical symptoms. But we know that that just continues the cycle of there's something wrong with my body. So people who are very somatic, people who we used to call hypochondriacs, they overestimate physical symptoms. There's even something called anxiety sensitivity, which describes people who overreact to normal physical symptoms in their body. And then that sets off that cycle of, oh no, what's wrong with me? When a child is having some sort of physical symptom and you've ruled out stuff, and now we know that these are anxious physical symptoms, the goal is not to treat the symptom as if it is the problem, but to keep the child doing their life, keep them going to school. Somebody asked this question actually about throwing up. What do you do if a child is throwing up? And they would bring the child to school, the child would throw up, and then the nurse would call, and the child would be taken home from school. And then the child would get home from school, totally fine. The mom was getting the hang of this and wanted the school to not send their child home, not treat the child as if they were sick. And unfortunately, the school was not on board. I've also had people reach out to me to say that the therapist that their child is seeing, without the parents, was also not on board with this plan. We don't want to treat a child who's anxious and having physical symptoms as if they're sick. That's doing the disorder. And then there's one other thing that happens all the time, which I don't hear people talking about, is teaching kids who are somatic, meaning they have physical symptoms, teaching them what's called progressive muscle relaxation. So if you have somebody who gets anxious about their body, about their tummy ache, about their pain in their leg, about whatever, and the prescription you give them is to lie down and focus on your body, relax your muscles, put all of your attention inside, you are doing the disorder, because the goal is to do the opposite of what the worry wants. If somebody is somatic, if somebody is hypochondriacal, they're paying attention to their body all the time. And we want them to get connected to things outside of their body. And very often, the prescriptions that people get, the recommendations, the things to practice, are things that pull them back into their body. And that's the opposite of what we want to do. A long time ago, I had a client, he was a grown-up, very, very anxious, worried about his body all the time, worried about his blood pressure, went to the doctor. The doctor said, well, if you're worried about your blood pressure, what you should do is just get a blood pressure cuff and take your blood pressure a lot. And I think the doctor probably said, take it 3 times a day and write it down. It took about 3 days for him to be taking it 50 times a day.
Wow.
He had a spreadsheet. So the doctor was prescribing the symptom, which is
Yeah.
an over attachment, an over connection to your physical self.
What did you say to that individual once you learned of this?
Yeah, I told him to stop it. I explained to him why. This particular fellow was very resistant to any of my suggestions. So the other thing that is problematic often is that if a person, if a child, if a family believes there's something physically wrong with a child, and they're taking them to all different types of people and getting all sorts of different types of diagnoses, I become the bad guy. I become the one who doesn't believe them. I become the one who is not validating this child's distress. And what I try to make very clear, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, is that I am validating that they are absolutely having the distress. I'm just giving them a different approach to it. I just was talking to another family where the child was having tummy pain. They had done an endoscopy. They had done a colonoscopy. They had gone through all these different tests, and the doctors had said her digestive system is working fine. We get that she has these issues because anxiety can certainly contribute to them, but we wouldn't recommend continuing to look for the source. We think we have it. And this family said, absolutely not. And then, unfortunately, there are a whole bunch of people, and this is a topic for another day, there are a whole bunch of people who will step into that arena and come up with all sorts of different diagnoses. I had one client that was holding these metal bars that were supposed to balance her system, and it was going into this machine. I mean, it was just like, I was like, really, really, really? The more that you get into the idea that the goal is to discover, to search, to analyze, to investigate, the worse often that the physical symptoms become.
You talked about the internalizing disorder that is anxiety and how anxiety is a pathway to depression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the same thing happens. So if we have an internalizing disorder, that means that we do the work on the inside. It's a very internal process, what you're saying, what you're thinking, how you're reacting, how you're responding. Like anxiety, we were saying the hallmark is certainty and comfort. The depressive part, the hallmark of that is passivity. I would highly recommend, if you haven't listened to the episode that we did with Michael Yapko talking about depression, he is really, really good at describing this. It's a fabulous episode. He's brilliant. And what often happens is when people get depressed, of course, their world gets smaller, just the same way it does with anxiety. So they're not doing the things that activate them. And they're spending time alone. They're feeling less energized. They're feeling less motivated. They're feeling more and more incapacitated. They may begin to focus on their physical symptoms. And so if, as a person who's trying to help somebody with depression, if you prescribe going inside and examining, what are you thinking? Going inside and analyzing, going to the past a lot, because that's called a rumination. And we know that depressed people ruminate, anxious people ruminate. Anxious and depressed women ruminate more. Ruminate means you're going over things over and over again. So if you are in therapy for depression and what you're doing is professional ruminating, that you're going over things, that you're sort of stuck, that you're having a hard time moving forward, that you are taking the approach to life that I can't do anything until I feel better. So I better go to therapy and talk about all this stuff so I feel better so then I can move forward. We want to reverse that. It's called behavioral activation. We want to get you doing things. We want you out of your head. We want you living your life. And then you can go to therapy still and, sort of figure out from whence this came, which again is usually sort of helpful. But the solution is taking steps to live your current life, to focus on how do you get to the place in the future you want to be. Ruminating, thinking, analyzing, isolating, going inside, becoming more passive is the way that very often the depression gets worse, because we are doing the disorder. We are working for the depression. We are powering up the passivity.
Hey.
Yeah. How about that?
That's another good one. And anxiety and depression are just undefeated in terms of conjuring up new thoughts which will support their stance.
Undefeated. Yeah. There is a limitless supply of the things you can come up with. Yeah. One of the things actually that I hear people get prescribed a lot, which is interesting to me, is a lot of people who are in therapy for anxiety or depression, they journal. And they say, oh, I started journaling, or my therapist had me journal, which is a great thing. But again, it depends on what the prompt is. I talk about success journals. I want you to write down how you handle things. But if the journal is a way to sort of go back and work through things again and again and again, then you're going to stay in that place that the depression really wants you to stay. And the goal is to be able to sort of observe those thoughts and patterns and then do the opposite of what they demand. Yeah, that self-examination is just not going to help. The other thing, too, that is really, really prominent in both anxiety and depression is a sense of your own fragility, that you are weak or you are incapable or you can't handle things, or, you get knocked down easy and it's hard for you to get back up. I don't want any messaging that supports, well, there's really something wrong with you, or you're really not capable of taking steps forward. It's got to be the opposite. Because the disorder, like you say, is just waiting to grab on to anything that supports its case. It is looking for evidence to support its case. And that's what we have to push back against.
What might be a success story that you've seen in your office regarding this very thing?
About the depression and the self-examination?
Yeah, someone turning that around, because certainly society promotes that notion of you got to think your way out of it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was talking to this young guy recently who was just a wonderful human being and recent college graduate and trying to find his way in the world. And he was talking about what he wanted to do, and maybe he should take a step, and he had just gotten a new job. So he was doing a lot of really good things. And he said to me, can I talk to you about my plans of sort of, I have this idea. He said, I know that therapy is really like, you're really just supposed to sit there and listen. I was like, no. I said, no, I am not going to be the passive partner in this. My goal is not to sit here and listen. And I absolutely want to hear you talk about what you're doing next, because that's the action. Those are the steps that are going to help you get out of this. So it was funny because he was sort of saying like, I don't mean to offend you, but I really want to talk about what I want to actively do. And I know I'm supposed to just tell you how I feel and have you listen. That's a real common thing that happens. And the other thing too is people want to tell me their story, of course. They want to tell me how they got to this place. And I allow for that, of course. I wouldn't say to somebody, I don't want to hear about that. But after I get to know them, I will say, so we've got two directions we can go. One is that we can go back and talk about all the things that have already happened, or we can talk about what are the steps you're going to take moving forward, because this is an active process. I was just putting together a workshop that I'm doing. And one of the things that I'm doing for the clinicians that are coming to the workshop is giving them sort of a step-by-step plan of addressing this anxious depression thing. And the first step is I want the message to be right off the bat that this is an active process. it really sort of surprised me when this guy said to me, well, I know therapy is for you to sit and listen.
Sure.
So it's action, action, action.
Within action is hopefulness as well.
Yes, which is called positive expectancy. Positive expectancy, the belief that things can change. I was on Instagram and I was looking at one of the guys at the gym who helps train us, and he's amazing. And he's this huge guy and he breaks records and he squats this enormous amount of weight that is just shocking to me. But he put something up about weight training and powerlifting. And he was really talking about it from a process perspective, because he was trying to say, like, kids can come and do this with me. He said, because here are the things that happen. You come in, you set a goal. We track your progress. You believe you will never get to that certain weight, and yet look at where you go. You show up. It's about consistency. You have good days and bad days. You have somebody supporting your child and giving your child confidence as they do this thing. Basically, he was saying, like, this is a metaphor for how we want kids to learn how to grow and develop and gather strength. He was talking about literal strength, but it was an active process. And I just can't emphasize that enough, that anxiety and depression don't want you to do anything. They want you to sit and think and ponder and analyze, and it doesn't help. So if we're thinking about what helps, if you're thinking about, okay, so I've been working on this with my family, or I'm working on this with myself, I don't want you to make it too complicated. The simple things that you do to get your child engaged in their world, the simple things that you do to get them to feel as if they're contributing. We did that episode on the importance of contribution. The simple things that you do to get them out of their head and into the world make a huge difference. If a parent came to me and said, I've got this child I'm so worried about and he's isolating and he's not doing anything, what should I do? I would say, find a way to get them into the world. Have them volunteer, have them go walk dogs at the SPCA, have them get engaged in something. And if a parent says, well, what if I try and do that? And they say no, you keep doing it. You are allowed to set expectations, and you want to model this also. Getting you out, walking. I mean, it's not complicated. It just sometimes takes a lot of effort. You got to ask more than once. Say,
Sure.
well, I asked him, I told him that he should get a job and he said no. So what do I do? Keep at it. It's about consistency. Step after step after step. Keep at it. It works. It works. It's not all that complicated. It's hard work, but it's not complicated. Thanks for listening. And if you found this podcast helpful, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find this information.
And if you'd like to dig deeper on any of these topics, we have specialized playlists on our Spotify profile, and the link is in the show notes. Topics like teens, depression, and OCD. Bye, Lynn.
Bye, Robin.
Doug. Here we have the Limu Emu in its natural habitat, helping people customize their car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. Fascinating. It's accompanied by his natural ally, Doug.
Limu? Is that guy with the binoculars watching us?
Cut the camera. They see us.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.